The thing about it, a king don't chase a peasant. King chase kings. I want Joshua.
Deontay forever winning. What up? Let's go, baby! Let's go!
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Doesn't have any big fights at Tyson Fury. So the one thing he said that just stuck with me a little bit was Joshua's with the zone. He got, no. Fight by fight, I believe Joshua will be long term with the zone, but I won't let it obstruct the big fights.
So does that mean, and I hate, this is a little over my head business, but does that mean if there's more money in the pot for everybody on a Showtime pay-per-view, on a Fox pay-per-view?
Quite possibly.
Does that mean Joshua could...
Show me the money, man. Show me the money.
Quite possibly. Our priority...
So that means Joshua Wilder could happen on Showtime pay-per-view?
Could do. Our priority is to make that fight. Again, we can make that fight on Showtime, Top Rank, ESPN, The Zone. Our priority is to make that fight on The Zone. Joshua is with The Zone. But I go back to what I said. The ultimate focus for Anthony Joshua is to box Deontay Wilder. And if someone comes up with a load of money, guaranteed money, for it to be on Showtime, so be it. I just believe that the people that are going to come up with the most money for that fight are The Zone. But if I'm wrong, and if there's another opportunity, certainly we'll look at that as well.
Now, this is a soundbite. This is a video that is being used as ammunition to fuel a narrative. But that's mostly because the authors of the videos that are using this as ammunition, and other videos like it, the authors of the videos that are doing this are only using a portion of what Eddie Hearn is saying as opposed to the entire package, the entire thing. You see, what Eddie Hearn is basically saying is that Joshua fighting on a Showtime, or Joshua fighting on a Fox, or Joshua fighting on an ESPN, it's a possibility, but it is contingent upon those networks guaranteeing him what the zone is guaranteeing him. It's not that he can't fight there. He's on a fight-by-fight basis when it comes to DAZN. The thing is, DAZN is guaranteeing him certain dollar amounts. So in order for those networks to have an Anthony Joshua cross the street to them for a fight, not necessarily a multi-fight commitment, but for a fight, what those networks, like Showtime, like ESPN, like Fox, what those networks would have to do is match or surpass whatever DAZN is giving him. It's for this reason that Eddie Hearn, in this video and other videos like it, it's for this reason that he returns to the same point.
The ultimate focus for Anthony Joshua is to box Deontay Wilder. And if someone comes up with a load of money, guaranteed money, for it to be on Showtime, so be it. I just believe that the people that are going to come up with the most money for that fight are DAZN.
Now, at the time that Deontay Wilder made the announcement that he is rejecting DAZN's $100 million offer, an offer that would see him fighting Anthony Joshua
2 times.
$20 million for Brazil, $80 million for 2 Anthony Joshua fights. At the time that he rejected that offer and Stephen Espinoza took the podium and gave his speech, at any time during that speech, did you hear him say anything about making a counteroffer to Anthony Joshua that would be bigger than whatever he's being guaranteed?
No.
In other words, did Showtime send a counteroffer to Matchroom to Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua to stage the fight on their network for a greater dollar amount than what DAZN was going to pay for it? Did they send a counteroffer? Can you guarantee that Joshua fighting on Showtime makes Joshua more money than Joshua fighting on DAZN? At any time, did that happen?
No.
The answer is no.
They didn't.
Now, why is that? I'll tell you why. Because Showtime is relying on the pay-per-view model to pay the fighters.
The upside.
They're relying on the quote-unquote upside of a pay-per-view to finance whatever the fighters stand to make. The bulk of it, they intend for it to come from the fans.
Who might stream it.
The fans who may or may not buy the fight. The fans who may decide to steal the fight. Like 2 million of those fans, right here in America, stole Wilder's fight with Tyson Fury. But that's who Showtime is relying upon to generate the bulk of what the fighters stand to make. They're relying on the upside. But therein lies a dilemma. Therein lies a problem. You can't guarantee Anthony Joshua that the upside of this pay-per-view is going to be so big that it will exceed what he was being guaranteed from DAZN. Because they're guaranteeing him an amount. Whereas what you're
relying on
basically doing is giving him an empty promise, because you can't guarantee him with any certainty that enough people are going to buy this fight that the upside will exceed the dollar amount guaranteed from DAZN. There's your problem. What you're looking at is a situation to where maybe Showtime says, and this is just a crude example, but what you're looking at is a situation to where Showtime might say, okay, we'll promise Anthony Joshua $15 million. Guaranteed. We'll promise him $15 million guaranteed, and the rest of the money that he's gonna get is gonna come from the upside. But there's your problem. You don't know how big or small the upside is gonna be. You don't know that enough people are gonna buy this fight to where he'd walk away with more money from an upside than he would from a guarantee from DAZN. There's your problem. And it being that Anthony Joshua really isn't a pay-per-view star,
in America,
it being that he has yet to really build a solid base here, you understand?
In America,
it's not a secret that he's not as well known
in America
as he is in the UK. We all fucking know that. Fighting in America for this fight right now, that is made possible by DAZN. But why is that? Well, in order for him to normally generate the kind of money that he gets, well, you'd have to bill it as a pay-per-view in the UK. That's how you'd get the money. But it just so happens that now that DAZN's in the picture, they can guarantee him an amount of money that is comparable to what he'd make in the UK to fight in the USA. That's made possible because DAZN is guaranteeing him an amount of money that's comparable to what he would have made in the UK. That's what makes it possible. The fact that he can fight here and not take a loss, not take a pay cut, because they're guaranteeing him that he's going to make the kind of money that he normally makes. He'll just make it fighting in the USA. Now, I go back to my original point that at any time in that press conference that Showtime held for the Wilder versus Brazil fight, at any time in that press conference, did you hear Stephen Espinoza say anything about countering
what DAZN just put up?
The money that DAZN was putting up to stage Wilder versus Joshua? At any point in that press conference, did you hear anything about that? No, you didn't. Weeks later, are you hearing anything about them countering what DAZN was willing to put up? No. Why is that? Because they're relying on the upside of a pay-per-view to finance the bulk of what the fighters stand to make. And the biggest problem with that is you don't know how much that's going to be. So in that situation, what do? I'll tell you what you do. You play the waiting game. You sit on your hands and quote-unquote let it marinate. Quote-unquote build the fight. That's what you do. Why? Well, the only way that the upside of a pay-per-view could be comparable to what DAZN was willing to put up for it, the only way that that upside would be enough to where Anthony Joshua gets what he wants to get and Wilder gets what he wants to get is if you build this thing for such a long time that by the time it does happen, you get a return similar to Pacquiao versus Mayweather. Essentially, they're trying to mimic the success that they had with Maypac with this fight. And even though the delays in the Maypac fight are dissimilar, they're not similar at all to what's going on with this fight. Even though the Maypac fight was delayed for different reasons other than what's delaying this fight, they're still trying to apply that formula more or less because that's how they figure they can get the kind of return that they're aiming for. But to that, I will say this, particular to Wilder's fans, you guys can't run around claiming that Deontay Wilder is being avoided or has been avoided when he's the one who's declining offers to fight.
Did he just decline another
He's the one that for the last 12 months has shot down 5 consecutive offers to fight. The last one being the most egregious. They're offering you 2 fights at $80 million and $20 million to have a fight that you were going to have anyway, and you turned all of that down.
Why?
And to do what exactly? Play the waiting game so that Showtime can get in on the deal? Because that's what it's all about. Showtime is intent on staging that fight. But for Showtime to stage that fight and for it to be as big as they want it to be, they'd have to build it up even further. For the fight to generate a comparable amount on pay-per-view than what DAZN just put up, yes, this thing would have to build for even longer. So ladies and gentlemen, ask yourselves, how long do you really want to wait before this fight happens? Do you want to happen to Wilder what happened to Manny Pacquiao en route to a Mayweather fight? Did you forget what happened? He got knocked the fuck out by Juan Manuel Marquez. Remember that? And what's happening here is a threat to the fight itself because the longer you guys take to make it, the more the chances are that somebody might lose a fight. That maybe Wilder loses a fight, or maybe Joshua loses a fight. And the fight itself won't even really be in the same realm once one of these guys takes a loss, once there's officially a loss on their record. Right now, both guys are in their prime. Right now, both guys are champions, both guys are undefeated. That's what's going on right now. But you wait too long to make this thing, and you are jeopardizing the value of the fight, the value of the fight itself, the value that you guys seem so concerned with. And all for what? I address that question to the fans, like myself, whether you're a fan of Wilder or you're a fan of Joshua. Delay the fight. For what?
To do what?
So that Showtime can get in on the deal?
Is that it?
So that they can charge me and you more money than we would have been charged to see that same fight involving those two same fighters on DAZN sooner than later?
Is that it?
Delay the fight for what exactly? Ask yourself, from where you're sitting as a boxing fan, how exactly does delaying the fight benefit you? Don't you want to see the best versus the best while they're still at their best?
Don't you?
Or do you prefer that Showtime continue to stand in the way of the fight
Among several others.
so that they can charge you, listening to this video, so that they can charge you more money to watch it? Because that's what they want to do. That's what it's all about.
You ain't know?
You've got to take a look at how the two separate factions handle their fighters, and how one faction doesn't really stand in the way of their fighter fighting a fight, and one does. Here's an example. We know that Eddie Hearn and Bob Arum were involved in negotiations for the upcoming fight today between Anthony Crolla and Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, we know that Eddie Hearn was pushing for a purse bid. That way, in a bidding war, DAZN would have the opportunity
Bid on the
to
fight.
have Lomachenko fight on their platform, provided that they won the bid. Now, in order to stop that from happening, Bob Arum,
According to Bob Arum.
and this is per Bob Arum himself, they overpaid Anthony Crolla. They overpaid him so that they would be able to reach terms before a deadline. Because if they didn't reach a deal by the deadline, it was going to go to purse bid, and that opens the door for DAZN to bid on the fight. Well, Bob don't want that to happen, so he overpays Crolla. Fight ends up on ESPN. Now, throughout all of that, Eddie Hearn's not standing in the way of Crolla's title shot. He's not standing in the way of what he stands to make for the fight. He's not standing in the way of what's going on to accommodate
The platform.
DAZN. Like, all right, you guys are willing to pay him that? Okay, I'll send him over there, even though that's his guy.
Let him do his thing.
Now, what we see from the PBC, what we see from Al Hayman, and those guys, Shelley Finkel, Wilder's whole conglomerate, what we see from them is very different, because they actually are standing in the way of what is, or what could be, his legacy fight, what could be the biggest payday he's ever had as a professional boxer. They're standing in the way of that due to their commitments to a network. Now, Wilder himself has no contractual commitment, no contractual obligation to Showtime. At least that's the story. Wilder himself don't got no commitment to Showtime, but guess who does? His trusted advisor, Al Hayman. The guy who allegedly called the offer to Deontay Wilder from DAZN Mayweather camp money. And you have to wonder if he's operating in the best interests of his advisee, I should say. I don't even know if I should call him his fighter, because that would imply that Hayman is the promoter, and at least by definition he's not. But you have to wonder if he's operating in the best interest of his client when he characterizes a monetary offer like that as Mayweather camp money, when one, I don't know if you know this, but your fighter isn't Floyd Mayweather, or whatever, your client. Wilder is not Floyd Mayweather. So even if that is Mayweather camp money, what the fuck does that have to do with Deontay Wilder?
These nuts.
2. Is Showtime making Wilder such an offer? Is Showtime offering him something similar to fight Anthony Joshua, or anything, anything just in that realm? Or, does he stand to make $100 million or better from walking away from what he's being offered? You have to ask that question.
Because he told him to do
I
it.
compare these two scenarios because Hearn has a relationship with DAZN the way that Hayman has a relationship with Showtime. But in Hearn's case, he saw that the monetary offer that was made to his fighter in Anthony Crolla, he saw that, well, it's a substantial offer. You don't want to stand in the way of your guy making as much money as he can. You're his promoter. It's actually your job to make sure that he's getting as much money as he can. Whereas in the case of Wilder in relation to Hayman, it's unclear as to why Hayman, who's not Wilder's promoter, he's his advisor.
Oh.
It's unclear why your advisor would advise you to walk away from an offer of $100 million guaranteed.
Okay.
It's unclear why he would advise you to walk away from that To do what exactly? You walk away from that offer to walk into what?
Get what?
You understand?
Walk away for what?
For what reason would your advisor ask you to walk away from a guaranteed dollar amount like that unless there was something better? There would have to be. Otherwise, it's unclear as to why he would do that.
Yeah, why would
But what
he?
if I told you that your advisor has a relationship with a network? What if I told you that your advisor's relationship with that network is influencing what he's telling you to do? That he is essentially providing an assurance to that network that you won't stray far away from the flock. That you won't stray far away from the flock, even if it means costing you a substantial amount of money. What if I told you that he prioritized his relationship with that network than his commitment to you as your advisor?
Wink, wink.
The thing about these kinds of issues is they're convoluted. The picture isn't always clear. You have to take a step back to really get a full picture of what's going on. And what's going on isn't painfully hard to understand. Al Hayman has to provide assurances to Showtime who he made a commitment to, an extended commitment to a relationship that they already had. But Al Hayman is providing assurances to Showtime that Wilder won't stray far away, that Wilder will fight on Showtime, devoid of a contract, because even though Wilder's a quote-unquote free agent, if that's what he is, even though Wilder's a quote-unquote free agent, he's advised by Al Hayman. But the advice that he's receiving from Al Hayman is being influenced by Al Hayman's relationship to who? To Showtime. Showtime, who is paying Al Hayman for content. And you, the fighter, just so happen to be a part of that content, a part of that content deal, to some capacity. You know, if I didn't know better, I'd say that for an advisor, Hayman sure works a lot like a promoter. But he can't identify himself as a promoter, because if he did, if he were both promoter, advisor, and manager, well, that's too much hegemonical control over a guy's career. And that kind of control would find Al Hayman in violation of the Ali Act. So he's got to move like a promoter while acting, or at least identifying himself, as an advisor. Quite the swindle indeed.
What? Right!
As a result of that, the advice that he dispenses in the best interest of his banner, of himself, but I'm not so sure that it's in the best interest of his fighter, because, hey, Wilder walked away from $100 million, didn't he? He walked away from $100 million to walk into what? What is the compensation for walking away from that amount of guaranteed money? What is it, ladies and gentlemen? I'll tell you what it is. An empty fucking promise. That's what.
Walk away from there, okay?